Let's do it. We are going to go out to Mississippi. We are going to talk with Hannah. She, her wants to talk about materialism and physicalism. Well, Hannah, we have been steeped in that sauce today. So you've got three of us. We're going to try not to gang up on you too much, but it's SR, GE, and the Blind Limey. What you got for us, Hannah?
So I would like to continue what I've talked about previously about why I think materialism and physicalism are not logical ways to go about the ones you could say is either epistemology or methodology of studying existence, or you could say metaphysics. Like, I don't believe materialism or physicalism metaphysically is cannibalizer, but to my understanding, you've said in the past that you are more of a methodological, or you could also say epistemological materialist than a ontological or metaphysical materialist, right?
Yeah. I think that's pretty fair. Jamie or GE, if you guys feel differently, please jump in at any point. So,
no, I class myself as a materialist and empiricist. I'm not too up to speed on all of the philosophy words. I've heard them before. I might need you to explain them to me, Hannah. Please do assume that I don't know what you're talking about unless I indicate otherwise.
Speak to us all like we're five. Honestly, it's a good way. It's a good way to talk to us. But yeah, please go ahead. Tell us your thoughts. Why not materialism or physicalism? What do those have that are problematic?
Well, just before I do that, could I also ask, just to confirm, GE also identifies as a methodological as opposed to methodological materialist? Or a methodological as opposed to metaphysical materialist?
Oh, yeah, I would definitely say I'm a methodological naturalist, yeah.
So just real quick, Hannah, I'll just help anybody in the audience that isn't totally up to speed. Just basically what all three of us are saying is we are not categorically ruling out immaterial or non-physical things. But what we are saying is currently when it comes to investigating the things around us, when it comes to generally operating from day to day, we are going under the assumption that the answer is not going to be any one of those things. We haven't gotten there just yet, but I think that's a decent. I'm sure somebody's going to yell at me about that though, Hannah. So what do you think? Where are we going?
So there's several problems, I think. So the first is, I would like to be the problem with trying to define a rigid methodology. And the second thing I think is problems from cognitive science against materialism and physicalism. I think I should first start with the epistemological one, because we talked a lot about the cognitive sciences part last time, and I would like to get more to the methodological and epistemological problems. So one of the problems I have with materialism and physicalism, especially when we're talking about using it in scientific theories, is that, so are you familiar with Sir Karl Popper and his theory of falsification as a demarcation between science and non-science?
No, the only Popper that I read was the Three Worlds Theorem, and that was for a cognitive science essay I did in university, so I've almost forgotten all of that. And also, I don't really get on board with that because the third world, the immaterial world, I've never seen any evidence for it. So while I used it as the backbone of an essay I wrote once, I'm not entirely certain that I would agree with Popper that there's a third immaterial world, but maybe I'm getting off track here.
No, that's fine.
Well, so I'm not necessarily arguing using Popper's point about the three worlds. I'm more arguing his methodological point, because I said, like, we're going to make this distinction between the methodological and then the arguments from the metaphysical. The methodological problem with materialism and physicalism is that Popper had argued, and I think this makes sense because of the problem of induction pointed out by people like David Hume, is that you can never be certain that a scientific theory is true, but what you can say is we can falsify assertions. And the problem with methodological materialism, methodological physicalism, especially if it's used in scientific theories, is that I don't believe it can be counted as scientific using Popper's criteria of falsifiability, because I don't know what I can't even conceive of something that would falsify materialism or physicalism in a scientific.
Okay. Go ahead, John. Yeah.
Well, I was just going to ask, like, what are you offering some kind of competing thing? Because, like, here's how I view science and empiricism and methodological naturalism. It's an effort to try and figure out or build a a worldview or a view of reality that is most closely aligned to the actual reality that exists. And so this scientific effort constantly needs to update itself, because the fact is that we are human beings. We're the world, our reality is filtered through, our senses and how we view things. And so with us being so limited in that way, we have to constantly update and change our view of reality. So are you offering a better way to figure things out?
Well, so I'm not necessarily saying that. So first of all, I would like to say in response, you mentioned methodological naturalism. What I'm criticizing them is methodological materialism, methodological physicalism, not naturalism. And naturalism and physicalism and materialism aren't the same thing, right? All naturalism says is that everything operates according to laws of nature, and there are naturalists who oppose the existence of non-material entities which are natural.
Sure.
But what I'm trying to argue is more so that not necessarily that there's a better alternative. Well, my argument is that there shouldn't be a rigid methodology that science or the empirical method operates under, because I don't believe you can ever induce even probability of a scientific theory. Instead, what we can do is we can create models, and those models can involve material or immaterial things. But whatever hypothesis...
Okay, hold on. So, Hannah, listen, the thing that I'm trying to get to is that the scientific method is our best way to formulate a view of reality that best comports with the actual reality that exists. It's the best way that we've found to inform ourselves about what is real and what is not real, what is fabricated. What if not the scientific method and the achievements of science, but scientific reasoning? What is the other way that we are to form an accurate view of reality? Like what? I guess I'm just not understanding. Like, I get it. The scientific method is can be limited. It's definitely limited to reality. Silly of scientists to only be concerned with real shit. But if you have a better way of determining what's actually real, I'm sure everybody in this call would love to know that. And for all the flaws that science can have, does have, or possibly has, what's the better way to do it?
Well, so perhaps there's a misunderstanding. You're assuming that there is a better way, and what I'm arguing here is there is no quote-unquote better way. What I'm arguing is there are different methodologies for how to propose hypothesis. None of them will comport to reality. What you can do is you can propose a hypothesis and then prove it wrong in some limited context, but you can never prove anything about reality.
Okay.
Yeah, but you're not saying, Hannah, that we can't have any understanding of the world around us, right? You're not saying that. So we have talked about a lot on this platform, on other platforms, about the fact that, at the center of all of our methodologies, at the center of all of our understandings of everything, it all has this gigantic gaping hole in it. But we can still build and make progress and actually understand things and come to reasonably held conclusions. You're not saying that all of that venture is just completely worthless.
No.
Okay, so it doesn't. So hang on. So the issue that you're bringing up is not one that actually is a problem for this methodology, because it is the same issue that every single methodology has. Everything falls back down to that black hole of nothingness where we go, oh, it's either ad infinitum, it's either a presupposition, or it's fucking circular. That's it. That is the answer at the end of the day. And all we can do from there is then start to evaluate both of those in the real world. And that's where the science of it comes into it. And that's what GE was getting at. Like, if you and I both have different ways of building this car, and I get in my car, start it up, and drive to the end of the fucking block, and you never move, man, I don't care what's at the center of my, methodology that's fucked up. We both have it, and apparently mine still builds cars.
Yeah, and I've got just a quick question. If you're so critical of materialism and physicalism. Can you give me an example of something that is both immaterial and real?
Well, first of all, we're talking about the methodology, and what you're asking is more of a question of metaphysics. But I believe SR just misrepresented my position on the scientific method.
Help me out.
Which is what I think. What was that?
Help me out. I don't want to misrepresent, so please correct me.
So to be as precise as possible, what I'm saying is not that there is a truth which we can come close to that corresponds to the external reality, because I don't believe you can ever correspond to the external reality with certainty, with the exception of mathematics, perhaps.
But I don't care about certainty. I don't care about whether or not we know that it corresponds with 100% certainty. That is not a problem, right?
Okay, so I just finish my position before you continue, because I've let you explain your rebuttal to my point, and then but
go ahead, Hannah.
Finish
go ahead.
But what I believe what we can do is we can propose models which don't correspond to reality per se, but because they have enough predictive methodology, they have enough predictive power, they're not true, but we treat them as true in the sense that we'll use them in the way we construct technology, we'll use them in the way we live. And so something like, does a certain medicine cure a certain disease or not? Well, I don't believe you can. I agree that certain induction is impossible, but what I believe is you can take that, you can create a hypothesis about how the medicine works and the causal relationships that the medicine has to the human biology. And if it's not proven wrong and it has enough predictive power that when people take the medicine, it cures disease, we're not necessarily posing an absolute causal relationship, but we still treat it as true.
So tentative truth based on scientific data and evidence is where we sit, is what you're saying, if I'm following correctly. How is that a pushback in any way, shape, or form on materialism or physicalism, Hannah? Everything I just sat through and let you explain had nothing to do with what we're talking about. So please help me out, since you so desperately had to let me know that you had to get this thought out. I want you to get your fucking thoughts out, Hannah. I want you to clarify. But if you're going to do that every time, I am not going to let it go, because I'm telling you, what you just said had absolutely no bearing on the conversation. So connect it back for me. What's the problem with materialism and physicalism when it comes to holding tentative truth?
Well, so the problem with materialism and physicalism as methodology, and first of all, it's not about evidence. I said it's about falsification or proving wrong. It's not about giving evidence for theory, but creating predictive power which is not falsified. But when it comes to materialism and physicalism, the problem I have with using that as methodology is it's not falsifiable. So I can't conceive of evidence that you could present to a methodological materialist or methodological physicalist.
So this is what I wanted to go back to, because this is where you got off the track from the beginning, and I was trying to help you out with this. What you're doing is you're trying to find scientific evidence for a philosophical problem. You're not going to find a test tube or a beaker or any type of methodology that can be run, okay, in a physical, tangible, scientific, in a lab sense to help you out with the paradoxes like the Grim Reaper paradox or anything, because they are in a separate category. So what you would have to do is you would have to use other philosophical justification, which we can do, which is why I went through the whole time of talking about Munchausen's trilemma again, Hannah, because that's the way you play that game. My theory has a hole, your theory has a hole, nobody's fucking perfect, but then from there we have to go out into the real world and see how it comes back to us. And so far, we don't have anything from the non-materialist. We don't have anything from the non-physicalist. It is all 100% in our camp. And that's where we need to go.
But you made a mistaken point there, and I think that's where the misrepresentation of my position comes in about the methodology and my criticism of materialism and physicalism regarding this. Because you're asking, am I trying to provide evidence for something non-material? I'm saying there is no such thing as evidence. There is no such thing as something which you can provide which confirms or verifies a theory. There is no evidence.
There is logical argumentation. That's what I'm saying. You're mixing up the categories. You're not understanding what you're looking for. You're digging in the sand and you're hoping to find gold, but you have no idea what the fuck gold looks like or the properties of it. You know what to do when a philosophical argument sounds kind of wonky, and it's to go and argue the philosophy. You're not going to find it. You're not going to find the evidence in that. You're telling me something that is like, yeah, man, of course not. Like, you're walking up to me saying like, hey, you just made all these cupcakes, but you know what you're not going to find in those cupcakes? Chili. You're never going to find a nice fucking meaty chili in those. Yeah, I know that, bro. I ain't worried about that. We move on to the next thing. We actually try to get some answers on this. But I'm sorry, I'm rambling. Please, Jamie, I know you had something.
The thing that really blew my mind was using the example of testing medicines as a counterpoint to physical and material methodology for testing, because we absolutely must use we're physical creatures. I'm a human being. Like, we test these medicines, and we can know whether, like, falsify the theory that this works. If it doesn't cure the disease, or worse, kill someone, then we can pretty definitively say that we have falsified the hypothesis that this medicine works. Like, and it's all done through materialism. It's not. There's nothing outside the material when it comes to medical science.
And if you want to argue, if you want to push back on that methodology, you don't do that by saying, well, there's no test you can run to prove it. Of course not. That's not where the falsification is problematic. The falsification is problematic in the philosophical sense. It is problematic because it is a non sequitur. It doesn't follow. The logic doesn't work. That's where you have to push back. So you're not gonna be able to push back on materialism or physicalism this way. Just like, really, it is not pushing back on dualism to say, yeah, well, you can't find any evidence for blah blah blah. That does not actually disprove dualism, right? Because that's just not what you do in that arena. It would be like, I'm not going to give another example. We're already over time. Hannah, I'm just going to drop you real abruptly. I'm so sorry. I do appreciate you calling. I really do enjoy these conversations. I don't get them enough. So thank you so much.